I'm gonna do a double knot.
Yep, tie me up, babe.
Sinekomaka Nunawam.
And the other one goes here.
Chikamani Nunawam. That is my version of an introduction in Virginia Algonquin.
Yeah, well, when we do this.
This feast was all about reclaiming what's been lost. Organizers say what's happening here is revolutionary.
You being here is just a part of really a revolution as we start to reclaim our food pathways as Indigenous people, but as people who are just trying to save the planet as well.
Troy Wipungwe works at William & Mary's Institute for Integrative Conservation. He came up with the idea of a feast, hoping to spark a movement.
And it really just seemed like there was something there, and maybe having a large feast to kind of direct everyone's attention to all of these diverse efforts around food sovereignty.
Food sovereignty is all about rejecting industrialized practices around food. The movement encourages growing healthier food without chemicals in a more sustainable way. The idea is being embraced and promoted by many Indigenous communities.
We live in a very interconnected world where something as simple as the spices we use on our table come from thousands and thousands of miles away. And there's just such a diversity of food that exists here.
Culinary educator and historian Joe Rocky has spent the last decade researching foods that are native to the Americas.
So many things from Native American history revert back to Native American foods. They did change the face of the planet. 3/5 of the world's food came from here. It can be served hot or cold.
Rocky is a Pamunkey tribal member. He cites foods like tomatoes, potatoes, and chili peppers, items more commonly associated with Italian, Irish, and Asian dishes. He says they were all foods grown by native tribes and exported by colonizers from the New World.
And it's ironic that now that we think of other cultures and we can't even separate their foods from our own, but our foods changed everything.
Now, Rocky wants to reclaim those ingredients.
It's rediscovery of a history that has purposely, for one reason or another, been taken away. It's a huge part of culture that's not there.
And you get scalloped potatoes with your meat pie.
Lonnie Costello and his wife Ginger own a Virginia business that relies on native traditions for inspiration. They're also serving at the feast.
Mainly the foods that I was eating as a child with my grandfather was wild game, fresh fish. So what we do here is we're taking those type of foods and incorporate into a modern type of dish for people.
Costello grew up on the Mattaponi Reservation in King William County with his family.
We fished, we hunt, we trapped, we grew gardens, we canned our food, we even canned meats.
In 1974, National Geographic called Costello's grandfather the last Virginian to live entirely off the land.
I went with my grandfather every single morning, and every spring it was a routine of about 6 weeks of fishing. Every day we would fish 3 tides a day to catch the fish, not only to supply food for ourselves, but also to sell for income.
In 2022, the Costellos opened their winery, the Mattaponi Reserve. It's one of only a few native-owned and operated businesses in Virginia that's serving indigenous foods. While they don't catch and grow everything they serve, they do source much of their ingredients locally.
We know where it comes from. We can speak to the owners who provide the meats and things that we purchase for our foods here. So it's just a connection.
Another organization that partnered to put on the feast is all about growing local.
This is sumac.
Ben Fritton runs the Reed Center for Ecosystem Reintegration. It's a 160-acre parcel of land in Maryland used for sustainable agricultural practices.
Our goals here are growing food that grows itself. We want to create a self-perpetuating agricultural system, a system that over time only increases the amount of food that it's able to produce.
Instead of just growing one crop, which is a common modern agricultural practice, the Reed Center explores growing multiple plants in one space. It's a centuries-old practice that Fritton says is better for the soil and for our nutrition.
What was that ecosystem and how was it able to thrive for thousands of years before we started turning it into whatever we're growing as annual crops now.
Fritton is trying to recreate those landscapes here. He says rethinking how we grow our food is imperative. In fact, he calls it a matter of national security.
One of the most important things that I think needs to happen as a Homeland Security initiative is to have hyper-local sustenance infrastructure.
The ultimate goal is to encourage people to replicate these systems on a smaller scale in their communities and backyards.
If we don't start thinking about food as part of our infrastructure, as part of our Homeland Security, the cities that currently have 3 or less days of food stocks are susceptible in a globalized food system to all kinds of very chaotic outcomes that I don't think any of us would like to witness.
One positive outcome from the pandemic, more Americans have begun growing their own food. Now, more than 2 in 5 U.S. households are cultivating their own vegetables, fruit, berries, or herbs. One Nottoway tribal leader is helping people interested in backyard gardening.
We can't all go full traditional, but we can certainly weave some of our traditional foods into our current diet.
Beth Roach started an organization called the Alliance of Native Seed Keepers. It's a network of people committed to growing and sharing native seeds. We met up with her at her tribe's annual powwow.
The important thing is going through the whole cycle of picking your seed, getting your soil right, putting that seed in the ground, starting it, see it grow, keep watering it.
Roach says eating food you've grown helps connect you with nature and with ancient traditions. She says the feast celebrates both of those things.
The feast is a highlight of our cultures from long past, but it also gives us an opportunity to talk about how we're still doing our food ways today.
Wipongwe hopes to take advantage of that opportunity by bringing chiefs, chefs, and scientists together for many more feasts, with the hopes of enjoying indigenous food, sharing knowledge, and growing the food sovereignty movement.
Bringing people together to really build a coalition around one of the human activities that has the most damaging impact, but the most important activity that we engage in on a day-to-day basis, and that narrative of how we move forward is why a feast like this is important.
Thank you for watching. Continue to follow Virginia news and stories by subscribing to our VPM YouTube channel.